Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, as we wrap up 2018, we'll take a reflective look back at the year that was. The highs, the lows, the chaos, and the hope as we head into a new year.
And I'm Malika Bilal. We'll be joined by a special group of faith leaders to have this conversation about the global news of 2018. And we want you to be a part of it too. As always, share your thoughts in our YouTube chat or on Twitter at AJStream.
It has been a tough year in global news. The brutal war in Yemen grinds on. Children caged on the US-Mexico border. The chaos of Brexit continues. Palestinians shot down by Israeli soldiers on the Gaza border. Hair-raising climate change warnings issued. And Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was brutally slaughtered by his own government.
But there were also positives. North and South Korea vowed to formally end their decades-long hostilities. The first Muslim and Native American women were elected to the U.S. Congress, and scientists developed a plastic-eating enzyme that could be an environmental game changer.
So, how do we reconcile the good with the bad? With us today, we have the Right Bishop Gene Robinson. He is Vice President of Religion at the Chautauqua Institution. That's a non-profit education center.
In Dallas, Texas, Imam Suleiman is founder and president of the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research. And in New York, Rabbi Dania Ruttenberg is rabbi in residence at Avuda, a network of Jewish leaders. Welcome to the stream, everyone.
It's really good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel triply blessed today. Excellent having you all here. I want to show you a picture. This is Imam, and this is on the Texas border, and the hand on a van. Imam, can you tell us where you were, what you were doing, and what you were feeling?
So we, as a group of faith leaders, actually went down to McAllen, Texas in the immediate aftermath of the family separation policy. And unfortunately, what we saw down there were warehouses that have been converted into immigration detention centers that are now housing children literally in cages. And we managed to intercept a bus of children that was coming out of one of those warehouses. We realized, even though you could tell in that picture, the windows are very tinted, but we realized those children were in there. And as we realized that, we all just kind of rushed towards that bus and started to show those children love. I consider that, you know, I've had the blessing of doing a lot of work in refugee camps and working in various places where there's been disaster and things of that sort. That was probably the toughest moment of my life in recent memory, because though I could, you know, I'm a pretty tall guy, so I could reach up and I could reach the windows. And children were putting their hand on my hand and they were looking at me and crying. And I was praying for them. And it was a deeply disturbing moment because I couldn't ask them what their names were. I couldn't touch them. I couldn't comfort them beyond simply putting my hand on the glass. And that to me defined the dehumanization of particularly those that are seeking asylum at our border, trying to escape conditions that we've helped create as a nation, and
Sure.
we have reduced them to images that cannot be accessed.
I belong to a remarkable group of senior fellows at the Auburn Seminary. We sort of think of ourselves as revolutionary love warriors, and we go to places just like this. We go to the border to stand with refugees and asylum seekers and these families that were torn apart. We're in Ferguson with Black Lives Matter, and we're against voter suppression, and we're with the nuns on a bus fighting for equality. I think what we're seeing in 2018 is what happens when fear rules us and we start making other people the enemy. And so we take it out on the least strong, the most vulnerable, the poor, the marginalized. And so when religious people of all kinds, Sikh, Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, show up and offer the kind of love that the Imam is talking about, it actually speaks for all of the world's religions and not just our own.
I wanted to share, Rabbi, I wanted to share with our audience, just before we get too much further, the image that Femi shared. If you take a look at my screen here, it was shared thousands of times, liked and hearted. And there was one person who writes in, this is Brian, who says, "I don't know anything about you, but you are the kind of person I would like to call a fellow citizen." So you saw lots of comments like that. And I bring this up because it dovetails really nicely with this tweet we got from Hen Mackey. On Twitter, she says, the highs for her in 2018 were that faith leaders have redefined what it means to be a part of the moral majority by providing sanctuary for migrants, leading the Poor People's Campaign, taking a stand against anti-Semitism like in Philadelphia, and Islamophobia like the Muslim travel ban. So Rabbi, I give this one to you to talk about that moral majority. Talk about what that means to you.
There has always been a stream in every religious tradition that is fighting for justice. I mean, this is the heart of every religious tradition, is fighting for justice, is fighting for the care and concern and well-being of every single human being, that sees that we are all, in the language of my tradition, created in God's image, and that centers each of our wholeness. And it's been powerful to see that really finally kind of emerge in a new way in the last 2 years, as people have, people who are less engaged in faith traditions have begun to say, what do we do here? We've gotten so far down this track of dehumanization, of seeing other people as in transactional ways, of seeing other people as means to an end, which is what leads to these horrific policies, which leads to the Muslim ban, which leads to family separation, which leads to this many horrible policies around immigration, lack of gun control, et cetera. And those of us who are embedded in a tradition that says, no, every single human being has value and matters, and our policy needs to flow from that, and our organizing needs to flow from that, and how we engage with each other needs to flow from that, I think has come up to the surface and been welcomed and embraced by the larger American discourse in a new way in the last year or so.
I want to play a little clip of, and this is of the Imam, not in a mosque, but he's out in the real world. He's on the border of Texas, and this was a couple of months ago. Have a look, have a listen.
I'm Omar Suleiman from the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research, as well as Faith Forward Dallas. I come to you from Texas, where we have children that are in cages in McAllen. And I saw those children in those warehouses where glasses and tires used to be, that are now part of one of the most profitable slave trading, government trafficking operations that exist in the world today. And in Tornillo, Texas, where people are in tents that sought asylum and refuge, where we were told they will only be there for about 2 or 3 months, and it continues to grow. And when a group of us, pastors and imams, went to that camp, the children asked for our prayers, and all that they asked for was that we pray for their moms. And we had a hard time driving back home, recognizing that it's our government that has traumatized these children.
The reason why I wanted to share that with you, guests, is because you all practice politics with a small p. That could have been at a stump speech there, Imam. And I know, Rabbi, you do the same thing. You speak out about what is happening politically in the US, in the world right now. Bishop, you and then some. How's this year been for you politically? What's happening?
Well, we do this political work as Christians because Jesus was always doing political work. Jesus wasn't associating with religious types. Jesus was doing the work of reaching out to the marginalized, who were always being oppressed by the majority and by the empire. And so when we put ourselves on the border, when we support the Parkland high school students, when we deal with refugees and asylum seekers, for us, we are being Christ-like. remarkably wonderful and that we're recognizing so much today is that we see this in Islam, we see this in Judaism, and in all the great world religions. It is always the care for the marginalized, the poor, and the dispossessed that should be our focus. And so when people see all kinds of religious people standing up for them, it makes a huge impact. And I think perhaps in a very new way, they will begin to look at religion again for a moral compass.
Yeah, and I think that if you think of the, particularly the Abrahamic traditions, one of the things that a dear Imam, Imam Zaid Shakir, who was there, that was actually at the San Diego-Tijuana border, he mentioned that Abraham was a migrant, Moses was a migrant, Jesus was a migrant, Muhammad was a migrant, peace be upon them all. So how can we not stand with these people? So one of the things that we share with our prophets from the Abrahamic stream is that they themselves were refugees and migrants, and their politics were always the politics of the oppressed, standing with those who were weak and standing with those who were dispossessed from their homes and in other ways. And so we cannot live our tradition unless we develop that same empathy that those prophets had. And those prophets developed that empathy by being amongst the people whom they would grow to be able to help later on in life.
I would even argue that this exact awareness, at least it sits at the heart of Judaism, right? Our core sacred myth is the Exodus from Egypt and the subsequent commandment more than 36 times, right? More than any other commandment in the Torah, to care for the stranger because you were strangers in Egypt, right? It's not just that we were oppressed and then we have some memory of oppression and that should inform how we are. We are obligated, and we have a sacred obligation to make sure at all times that those who are poor, who are vulnerable, who are in unique places of dispossession are cared for and empowered. And our prophetic tradition goes on again and again and again, reminding people when they forget that our one job that we have is to care for the stranger, the ger, the immigrant, the non-citizen, and also the poor, the widow, the stranger, the orphan, right? Everyone who is vulnerable. And it's the core of our I think of all of our traditions that we have one job. This is our job. We honor God when we care for other people.
If I may share a story about that, by the way, Rabbi, there was a man, the last person who was detained in Muslim ban in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, was an Iraqi man whose name was Isa, which is Jesus, and who had a broken pelvis because he was a military contractor for the U.S. Army in the Gulf War, and he almost died back there in customs as he was being held because of the pain and not getting proper access. And so what I said at the end of that was, I said, what does that say about the Christianity of those who uphold the Muslim ban and the patriotism of those who uphold the Muslim ban? They have failed to see the victims of these policies as human beings. And once you reduce them to subhuman, you get to act inhumane. So you don't just act removed from your faith, you act removed from your natural humanity. I mean, these are things that, yes, with faith, we should act with a greater zeal in support of migrant communities, and in support of refugees, and in support of people that are victims here at home from a militarized police force. But at the same time, at some point, you just have to remind people that religion tries to take the best of our natural human good and then amplify that.
And I would point out that you're seeing right here on this program what is new in the world. An imam, a rabbi, and a bishop is not the beginning of a bad joke. It's actually what is happening in a new way in 2018. You're hearing us all sing the same song, and it's coming in unison from a variety of different religious perspectives. That's something quite new.
And is that because of the political climate right now? Are you saying because of what is happening with immigration, with social justice issues, that everybody is getting together as a direct connection?
And I think the pressure on us as a culture, as a world, whether it be the climate change or the political situation, people are desperate in a way that they haven't been in a while. And I think it has called us as religious people to be our very best selves.
So this is hopeful.
I actually want to disagree that this is new. I think people who have been doing this work, fighting for justice from a religious perspective, have been working together across faith lines for a very long time. I mean, famously, we have pictures of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel marching along Dr. King in Selma, and there are stories that go back before that and back before that. And, we can find stories that are 100 years old and 200 years old. I think this work has been happening for a very long time. I think now, in this political climate, what we have are many other people who have been disengaged from justice work who suddenly understand how essential it is. And that there's a new wave of Americans who are making calling their senators a daily practice, right? And we have more people than ever who ran for office this cycle, right? We have people who are doing organizing in a new way, people who are showing up to protest for the first time in their lives, people who have never risked arrest and civil disobedience who are doing so, and so on and so on and so on. And I think those people who have woken up to the urgency of this work are looking to, some of them, not all of them, but are looking to those of us who are grounded in a tradition of justice and love and care for the other, can care for one another and solidarity.
Rabbi, I hear you there. And for all of you, we can't actually have this conversation without mentioning one name, whether that's fortunate or unfortunate. It's what our community is directing us to. We got this on YouTube right now. Brat Baby, that's their handle, says, "My head exploded every day with Trump" when we asked about their year in review. So, Imam Suleiman, I'll give this one to you. Talk about the presidency and the role of the Trump presidency and what this year has been.
I believe that, and this is where I think we can find the bridge between the rabbi and the bishop. The imam's got to step in and build the bridge. It has forced us, we've been forced out of complacency. So I do agree that there's been work that's been done, but Trump has rocked us to our core by how ugly his rhetoric and his policies have been. And I would say that's a good thing, because often goodness does not come except out of tension, especially when you're talking about societal change. And we were sedated in the Obama years. Anti-militarism work stopped. When you think about Israel-Palestine, that stopped. People didn't make much of an issue about that anymore. When you talk about immigration, Obama was no angel on immigration. He was deporter-in-chief, right? We had issues that existed. Racism existed. If you lived in the inner cities in the United States, the police, though they're acting with a certain fervor now towards inner city communities, police brutality was an issue under President Obama as well. So Trump represents the ugliest of society in the culmination of power once again in its most explicit form. However, those trends of white supremacy did still command our politics, our economics, our military policy, our domestic policy. These are not new things. And so now we have an opportunity, while people are rocked to their core, to utilize that tension to force athletes out of their complacency. So you have more Colin Kaepernicks, to force activists out of their complacency, so that a person like Sean King, who's a dear friend of mine, starts the Real Justice PAC with a group of other activists, where we're holding district attorneys accountable for not prosecuting police officers properly. So you take all of that and you create you organize that outrage. And Trump is as outrageous of a president as we've ever had. And I don't know if we'll ever have another one. I pray that we don't. But I pray that when we do restore some of the decorum of the federal government, that we do not once again remove ourselves from these spaces or act with less urgency. Because as the rabbi rightfully pointed out, some of us have been doing this work for a very long time. But I think now we're able to really broaden that work, and we're doing it with a greater sense of urgency. And I hope that doesn't go away.
Since we are moving into 2019, I wanted to share one reflection from someone on the hopeful aspects of what to look forward to. This is Lawrence, who was a guest on the stream in August, and he says being on the stream was one of his highs, but also the impeachment march and the National March on the NRA, which students helped lead after the Parkland shootings. He sent us a video comment, and this is what he told the stream.
This year, young people have won so much, and I'm not talking about people in my age bracket from 18 to 25. I'm talking about young kids, 16, 13, 12, and 11, protesting outside the White House, exercising their constitutional rights, and taking the process to our government. Our Congress is now more diverse and more younger than any time in our nation history. And we have done it because more young people have been out there and they have been voting, and the ones who could not vote have been exercising their rights to tell people to get out and go vote. But 2019 is going to be bigger, it's going to be better for younger people. And you think that we won this year? Wait till you see 2019 and wait till you see 2020.
He left us with a smile here, and unsaid the bishop is smiling there. Just wait till 2019. What were you thinking?
So I'm the old guy, right? And I love young people. And he did make me smile. And the reason is that it gives us another opportunity, not to take over their movement, but to stand with them, to amplify their voices, but let them have their voices. I mean, this is what we learned from Parkland, right? This is what we learned from all those young women who ran for Congress and won. It is literally changing the face of the Congress. So I think all of us who care about justice want to bring in those voices younger and younger. What a wonderful thing for us as religious people to teach our children that justice is what religion is about. It is what the divine is about, however described, however named, and to welcome them with open arms, generosity.
Mm-hmm. Rabbi, what will be in your prayers for 2019? What are you hopeful for?
Oh, I hope for so many things. Besides my messianic hope that Mueller will come and clean everything up and tie it up with a nice bow. I do have a little bit of that, but I hope and pray and have faith in us. I think we have begun to see our own collective power in a new way. And the force and energy we're seeing in the new incoming Congress is part of that. And I think that new, hopeful, optimistic energy, I pray that it's going to carry us forward and energize us, and particularly around climate change, which is urgent. It feels so now or never, that we start to implement some policies that can actually start to move things in a new way, that we can start to reverse course and take care of people at the border instead of imprisoning them and separating them from their families, that we can pass meaningful gun control legislation and make this the kind of country that cares about saving and caring for human beings.
Very comprehensive prayer, Rabbi. Thank you. Imam, what are in your prayers for 2019?
Well, I'm going to pray that people of faith are able to regain their scope and their credibility to serve, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, as the conscience of the nation. A lot of religious people have been opining on a certain element or certain elements of morality, and many have been completely oblivious about other forms of morality. What I'm praying is that as we come out of this complacency, we are able to bring the nation back to a moral center. And I don't think that that can but be done with faith leaders. So I'm praying that we're able to rise to that calling. I think that the stage has been set for us to do so, for us to form some of the most vibrant coalitions that are out there. But in the process of forming those vibrant coalitions, not lose ourselves and not lose the vision that we have for this country and for our world.
Sure. I hear a lot of hope from our guest, Malika.
There's hope online, but also appreciation. Deneen on YouTube says, I very much appreciate these faith leaders helping to remind us what really matters and what people of faith should be known for.
So right now we're at the end of today's program. I have time, though, to say to Bishop Gene Robinson, Rabbi Daniel Rothenberg, and also Imam Omar Suleiman, thank you so much for being on the show today. I feel I've learned so much, not just about the last year, but also what you're going to be doing for 2019. Don't be strangers to us at the stream. So we're at the end of today's program. Malika and I are always online. You can find us at A Day Stream on Twitter. Until the next time, take care, everybody.